Hello, and welcome to Freelance Frontiers, a weekly conversation navigating the future of flexible work. I'm Ray Hames. I'm an agency expat, brand side leader, and former freelancer myself. And I'm here with Nick Hammond. What's up, Nick?
How's it going?
Who is a career freelance creative turned coach. We're here to chat about both sides of the freelance relationship, and we hope that our listeners will find something in here that helps them smooth out the bumps along the road working with and as freelancers.
Nailed it. If you have feedback, insights, questions, or would like to join us on a future episode, drop us a DM. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about measuring performance, specialist versus generalist, and IP ownership, which is a lot. But today, we're going to be exploring something that can make or break freelance-focused team success, and that is capacity planning.
Whether you're planning for your team allocations on the company side or filling your books on the freelance side, getting the balance right is really important to making sure that you can deliver quality performance and obviously still try to enjoy some of the flexible benefits of the freelance dynamic. So Nick, let's jump in here and chat about the freelancer side of the equation. In general, how far in advance are you planning your own workload, and how do you decide when you need or want to take on more work?
Absolutely. So I kind of personally found a sweet spot between having like a retainer or two, plus a mix of some smaller projects that can come in based on different client needs. And at times that can get a little nuts when things stack on top of each other all at once. But I also think that that is kind of a part of just dealing with freelance. But from there, I tend to vet new project needs based on either like the amount of money I can get paid, how fun the project is, or how much learning I can get. So if I can bring in a new client that aligns more closely with those three, I'll usually try and remove one that usually doesn't quite check as many of those boxes. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to say it depends and on some other factors other than just capacity itself.
Makes sense. When you're talking about retainer work, for example, how long are your retainer contracts?
Yeah, usually it's a few months at a time, into anywhere to a year. It kind of depends based on the needs, and that's usually worked out based on conversations that are happening as we're adapting to things that are going on within the company itself. So yeah, usually months to years are kind of the longer term projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you, and maybe you don't have a hard answer for this either, but do you try to work a specific number of hours, like a day or a week, or in general, like how do you make sure that you're not burning the candle at both ends?
Yeah, so this I think is kind of hands down one of the hardest parts of freelancing, short of money management, which can also be a difficult time. And I don't think the work here is ever quite done, but being that projects and client needs are usually dynamic, I'm trying to always work to adapt more to a shifting workload and trying to gut check on where that's taking me as often as I can. So sometimes it's a matter of knowing I'll be working harder than normal for little sprints. And if those sprints seem to start to turn into longer form burning at both ends kind of deal, that's where I'm really starting to get into reassessing of, okay, what can I say no to and where? So usually I'm trying to limit it to, 40 hours a week as much as possible. But I also know that there are times where that can go up based on client needs.
Yeah. In a totally perfect world, when you get to control everything, what would your quarterly or annual workload really look like?
Yeah. I also tend to zoom out on this from more of like a career perspective, because I think for most freelancers, it's comes in stages based on where you're at. So the first is usually that you're doing literally whatever you can to survive, because you're jumping into freelance and you don't know what you don't know. And all of a sudden you're in the deep end. Like, I have to deal with all of this. So you're just trying to take whatever you can get. But once you kind of get a handle on some of those things and are, I'm a little more comfortable with the chaos, it becomes more about growth as a second phase. Like, how do I keep bringing on more and how do I sustain this a little bit? And then the third phase, which is kind of more of where I'm at with the workload, is starting to nudge more into stabilization. So it's usually, for me, it looks like limiting hours and maximizing time spent on projects that I actually enjoy. So I think a lot of that is kind of the shifting scale of, at first it's just surviving and money. And then as you get better at that, you start to push more toward like, you've got the money thing figured out a little bit, and now you can start to kind of focus more on the work itself.
Yeah. Yep. Little Maslow's hierarchy of freelance comfort.
We should make that. That needs to be a graphic.
the Hames-Hammond triangle.
That would be fantastic. What a wonderful, our last names work super well in that way. Hames-Hammond. Okay, cool. So to bring it back to kind of like brand side versus freelance side, based on your experience, how far in advance are brands building out their project plans? I know a lot of the times it can feel like I get hit up for projects that needed to be done yesterday or last week.
Yeah, I think that this really runs the gamut. I think that I've seen the most well-oiled machines are doing annual planning, right? That really align their project needs to business initiatives. And the general cycle there looks like company-wide planning. What is the company trying to do? That takes a couple months to, for the exec team to shake out. And then it goes to department level planning saying, okay, well, if these are our company goals, how are individual departments supporting them? And what do we need to get it done? And that can take another couple months to kind of even rough in what those project requirements look like and who you may need to help fill in gaps from your full-time team.
Yeah.
So that's like the best run teams. Most smaller brands and certainly let's talk about smaller brands first. They're probably working on more compressed timelines where they're reacting to kind of quarterly market dynamics and adjusting their next quarter's plan based on what's happening in the current quarter, which really doesn't give a lot of time for figuring out what specifically you need, what strategic direction are you going to take, because strategy is not a short-term thing, And I think that that's something that a lot of people miss is that strategic initiatives really are long-term ones. And then I think in the agency world where, a lot of freelancers get their work from, it's call and response. Agencies are responding to client needs, and, it really is just that things roll downhill. And so, I think it depends on where you're getting as a freelancer, it depends on where you're getting the bulk of your work, about kind of the luxury of what timeline your clients are planning with in the first place.
Yes, definitely. It's interesting too, because I was going to ask a follow-up of, how often do you tend to have to adapt to the plan? And it sounds like it's kind of more based on where the business is at and scale and that whole deal.
If you're doing a good job, like I said, kind of if you're doing a proper annual planning process, the benefit, especially the benefit of having a kind of freelance heavy team, is that you can adjust your needs based on market dynamics month to month, and it doesn't shift your entire strategy. You say, okay, we're seeing this one initiative produce results. We're going to double down on this. We're seeing this other one. It hasn't taken off. We're going to dial this down. Like, that is a totally reasonable way to use the framework that an annual plan provides, with some flexibility to work along the way. I think that it's just tricky if you're running a business in a really reactive way. I think that it can create a nasty ecosystem where you are coming to people begging for them to do work last minute. And ultimately, if you're working with people who are in demand, who are top talent, they may, first of all, good luck signing them up for last minute work, because they don't need to say yes. But if they do, they have every right to charge rush fees. And so, when you're not doing a good job planning, the ramifications are that you have access to a smaller talent pool, a smaller, quality talent pool, and your costs are going to go up because you have to, because what is the trifecta? It's like time, money, or it's going to be good. It's equality. Exactly. Yep. So, I think that adage is absolutely in play when we talk about capacity planning and when we talk about the value that forward planning has for brands. It's not just that everybody has a calm path forward. It's because there's genuinely more options to choose from when you're not having to make snap decisions on who's going to come on board to your team to help with last minute work.
I think those are all great things too. And I think from what I've experienced, it's a lot of decision making that is kind of done behind closed doors, not necessarily on purpose, but just because freelancers usually aren't at the table and privy to some of these decisions being made. So I do think it's cool to kind of surface more of these to help to explain to people why they're seeing certain downstream decisions being made based on what's happening, before they actually got brought in.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean, I mean, I like to think of myself as like, a nice, good manager, right? But like, I've been in middle management roles where I'm just the messenger,
Yep.
and the best I can do is try to make the most of a poor situation. And so the team that I'm bringing on, it puts more onus on everybody when planning's not done right. And I understand and sympathize with small businesses and agencies that sometimes that's just not possible. And yep. On the flip side, the kind of silver lining of all of this is that when you're in a pressure cooker environment, people rise to the challenge. And so once you have your team on board and you do have tight deadlines and you do have to make really mission critical prioritization calls, you can make really powerful work in that pressured environment. It's just not necessarily sustainable as a long-term way of working.
Exactly. And I think that's the key outcome is idea there is that there are things that are going to pop up no matter what, but it's more about making sure that you know how to adapt to it as it's happening, but then two, that doesn't become the norm just because you said you were able to, deal with it the right way when it popped up.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out about how how everybody, both on the company hiring side and the freelance side, can reflect on those types of projects to say, how am I gonna handle this next time it comes around? Because you're right, it's on everybody to create a system that again is sustainable and produces great work over time.
Absolutely. And as you probably heard based on my alarm there, I think that's about all the time we have for today.
Jazzy alarm.
If you found this useful or not, follow us here and over on LinkedIn for more tips on how you can get the most of working with and as freelance talent. Thank you.
Chat next time.
Bye.